Hi, I'm Brian Levy. I'm a partner at Manchester Living and the host of the Manchester Living podcast. The purpose of the podcast is to help people navigate the complex maze of elder care. And there is a lexicon of elder care terms on our website at manchesterliving.com. Today's new and noteworthy was a clip that a viewer actually sent me, and it just caught my eye and caught my attention. I wanted to share it with the viewers today. And that there, my friends, is a friendly reminder we are all just walking each other home. I thought that was beautiful. So let's introduce today's guest, Sandi Greenberg, registered nurse and director of nursing for Manchester Care Homes, and Kate Marshall, certified dementia practitioner, memory programs coordinator at Belmont Village Senior Living. Let's jump in today. We are talking about communicating with people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And I saw this quote, or it's not a quote, but it's an explanation. It says, "Some call it the long goodbye. A rapidly shrinking brain is how one doctor described it. As the patient's brain slowly dies, they change physically and emotionally. They forget who their loved ones are and become less themselves. Patients can eventually become bedridden, unable to move, unable to eat or drink or talk to their loved ones. It's an awful disease, but it's our duty and responsibility as caregivers, family, and friends of those suffering to learn how to best communicate with them and meet them where they are." All right. It's a tough subject, and I think it's an important one because families often don't know how to communicate with their loved ones or anybody with dementia. It's confusing at times. And I remember sitting at one of our care homes at breakfast one day, and one of our residents was eating cereal, and he was staring at it so intensely. And I got a little closer, like thinking, well, maybe there's something in there that shouldn't be. And he raised his spoon and he says, "Aha!" And I was waiting and waiting, and he picked up his Cheerio and he looked at me and he says, "My cell phone." And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, where do I go with this? And I just remembered what you told me is meet them where they are. And so we just had fun with it. And I said, well, we can make calls after lunch, after breakfast. And so we just went on with our business. So let's talk about the differences between Alzheimer's and dementia. Kate, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Basically, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, and you want to think of dementia. Some people talk about it like it's an umbrella. There are over 107 different illnesses that can cause dementia. The reason that dementia and Alzheimer's are often just referred to interchangeably is because it is the most common. Probably 7 out of 10 people with dementia will have Alzheimer's disease.
Talk about some of the basics in communicating with somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. When you walk in the care home, you immediately address people, I noticed, front on.
Exactly. When you're speaking with someone, when you're addressing or going to have any type of conversation with anyone with dementia or Alzheimer's, you never want to approach them from the back. It's frightening to them. I always tend to go right to their right face to face, eye level. I approach very slowly. If they're not sure, they're looking at me like they're not sure who I am, which sometimes happens, I will tell them, "I'm Sandi, I'm the nurse, I'm going to be taking care of you. Looks like you're having a wonderful breakfast," and just start to strike up a little bit of a conversation. I never ask them questions. I normally just sort of jump into whatever they would like to discuss at that time.
Elaborate that on that the questions. You don't ask questions.
I do not ask questions, and I teach the caregivers the same thing, that when you ask a question to someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, pretty advanced, a lot of times they see a blank slate, and it's scary to them. They don't know how to answer it, and they want to answer it, so they just look frightened, and it's a very sad feeling to see that. So I try not to ever ask any type of a question like, do you want to wear the blue shirt or the red shirt? I'll put both of them out and let them look, and then they can decide. The caregivers, are also instructed to, do not ask them to pick out their own clothes, but encourage them to, find things they'll be comfortable in, working with them on their level, entering their world, and just speaking to them in a way that they can feel comfortable and good about themselves.
Great. I get this question often, so I'm going to throw it to you guys. Why does my parent ask the same question or tell the same story over and over and over again? Right? I mean, what do you do with that? Let's just
we could go on for hours about this
right?
one.
Well, first off, you have to really work on your patience skills, because every time they ask that question, you have to react as if it's the first time they have asked that question. What is going on in the brain? The first thing that's impacted by dementia is the ability to form new memories. So the further down the road someone gets with dementia, the shorter their period of recall is. So if I asked you all what you had for lunch yesterday, you'd be able to tell me probably.
Maybe not.
Probably.
Right.
But if I asked you what you had for lunch 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday, you would look at me like you are right now.
Right.
So that time frame gets shorter and shorter as dementia progresses, to the point where people will not remember that they ate 5 minutes ago. And they tell the same story because it's something they're comfortable with, or your presence has made them think of that. Maybe it's a story they associate with you, or it was something that did actually happen earlier in the day that made an impact.
But it's important to know this affects short-term memory. I had a client telling me that in 1936, before she went to Hawaii, she went to the dentist and it was raining, but she had a blue dress on and her mom dropped her out front. And I mean, this whole story, but she didn't know what she had for breakfast.
Exactly.
That was eye-opening.
It's like the layers of an onion. The memory starts peeling off like the layers of an onion, and you get down to eventually just very long ago memories. So you'll have someone that can tell you all about that, but won't remember something from 20 years ago, perhaps, or definitely not from 5 minutes to an hour ago.
So what do you say to the spouse or the adult child who's getting frustrated with the repetitive stories and the lack of memory? How do you coach them?
I normally explain to them just as I explain to the caregivers, and try to practice myself of meeting them right where they are and not probing into conversations that are going to be confusing to them.
Keeping it simple.
Just keep it very simple. And if the resident starts to dive deeper into, like you said, their long-term memory, you can see the family members perk up and they get happy and they're feeling good. But you also want them to understand that this is part of the process. So it's a tough.
I think that's challenging for those of us that aren't in the middle of this disease, because we were taught to be good conversationalists, to ask questions and to really get to know someone
to give
else.
Choices.
This is the opposite of that, right? We now have come full circle. Great. All right. This is a good one because we deal with this often in our care homes, and I know that you do as well. Why is, Sandi, this one's for you. Why is showering and hygiene such an issue? And we talk about, aside from that, hair washing. So
that's a great question. One of the first things that the residents will tell me when they move in is, I don't like to take a shower. I do not want to take a shower. And it's not so imperative that they shower every day. They're not going outside. They're not developing body odor. But of course, we want them to be clean. So one of the biggest concerns they have, I think, the generation that we're working with right now, these women are used to having their hair done, washed, set in a bowl, with the curlers at a salon, and taking a bath. So it is a completely, and they'll tell you, they don't like the water, warm as we can make it, running down their bodies. It doesn't feel good to them. So, and it's scary. A lot of times they're scared. They're scared they're going to fall because they've had a previous fall. There's so many different things and considerations that you need to be taken when just showering somebody. That just shows you how one little activity can escalate and why we need to be so cautious of their needs.
Sure.
Yeah, and then there's the whole modesty and dignity issue with it as well. I mean, you may shower in front of your spouse, but
all of a
have
sudden
you
you're
ever taken a shower in front of a stranger?
Right.
Probably not since you were at camp.
Right.
You were a
It
kid,
just takes time.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's, we had a gentleman that just absolutely, with female caregivers, he would not get in the shower.
Is this a good example of the time where you give them a choice and say, we're going to really need to shower today? Do you want to do it before lunch or this afternoon?
The problem with that is that they might not remember this afternoon. They won't remember that you had that conversation. So with some people who are not as advanced through the disease process, that can work. But if they're pretty advanced in the process, well, depending if they can communicate or not, a lot of times I will just succumb and just say, you know what, that's fine. We're going to try it again tomorrow, or do a very intense bed bath.
Yep.
With them, hair washing, dry shampoos. There are a lot of things we can use now to keep them clean. So we have to be creative.
Sure. And I know we're all very respectful of family wishes, and we all have different boundaries, if you will. But I know at times families are okay with telling, we call it a therapeutic lie.
Yes.
It's kind of like what we do with our kids from time to time. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how you work with families to determine how to communicate with their loved ones?
Therapeutic lies, they happen quite often in this population, and I let the families know that it's okay, that it's safe, you're in a safe place, the resident is in a safe place, and that the goal of this therapeutic fib basically is just to help ease the process and help them get through whatever step it is we're working on. Whether that's eating a meal, if they say my meal came from Mars, great. I'll have one of those also,
Yes.
So I tell people at the end of the day that the fact that I can have a conversation
Right.
is pretty impressive. I'll say, at the end of the day, I got married today. I went to the moon today. There's lots of things that we do throughout the day as I roam through each care home.
Right.
Absolutely. We have a lady that is 100% convinced that we worked on a committee together with the Republican Party of Dallas County.
Wow.
And so, I go with that. I'm like, but you were much more important. You were higher up than I was. But she knows that she knows me. That's her frame of reference, because that was a very big part of her life. So I go with that.
Exactly.
That's
We
where
have a resident who's 104, and she's a Cowboy fan. You know what? Did the Cowboys win? Yes, they won.
I like to tell her the truth, but
Yes, they won.
She gets very sad. But that does bring up one quick point, and I won't elaborate too much on this, but we have a resident who decided that our care home is her sorority home.
There you go.
So, we just
take her. She wants to show you the sorority her room at the sorority house,
these are her sorority sisters, and it was fun.
But that's a good example of you meet them where they are.
Right.
It would be real easy to say, "Oh, come on, this in the sorority house," and argue with them. That's going to get you nowhere. Meet them where they are.
No, I had a lady that was convinced that our building was JCPenney headquarters.
Oh.
She had been a buyer for JCPenney.
You know what?
She would waltz into my office, and she was in mode, and she'd be pointing and telling me what to do, and call her a car because she needed to go pick up some samples. I would call my cell phone on the office phone, leave myself a voicemail, tell her that the car would be there in 10 minutes to pick her up. Was that okay? Yep. Walk out and be happy as a clam.
Let me just tell this one funny story. I have one resident, she's 102, and she was an RN. And when she first moved into our home, I got to work one day. I walked into the care home. She looked at me. She'd been rounding all the rooms. She looked at me. She said, "Thank God you're here. I can go rest now." So she took that on as her job.
That's her job.
And she still, to this day, will tell me how people are doing when I come to the care home.
That's a great segue to the next question. Thank you. Discuss some of the tricks and habits related to the disease, such as packing, pacing, folding, etc. People remember, whether it's their profession or hobbies or things that they enjoyed. It's okay to incorporate that in their world today. We had a gentleman who boxed, and it's not good to incorporate boxing because he did hit, but tap dancing, golfing, all of his hobbies, we just incorporated it into his world. Talk about the folding and the pacing.
We had a woman who, we walked into her room one day, and she had packed 2 suitcases in the corner of the room with her bath mat over, and she is a very, very funny, conversational woman. And we asked her, we said, "Oh, what's going on over here?" She goes, "Oh, I'm just packing later. I'm going to San Francisco," because she's from San Francisco. I said, "Okay, great." I said, "Well, in the meantime, will you come out and have lunch with everybody?" She says, "Of course." Hops up, gets in her chair, and comes on out. Never remember. And I offered, I said, "When you're ready to put your things away, just let me know."
So you don't call them out on it.
No.
You don't embarrass them. You don't ask them, "What are you doing? You're not going to San Francisco. You live here." Just go along with it.
Absolutely.
When there's confusion and discussion about visiting family members, and the family members come in, and then their loved ones are talking about somebody who clearly died 30 years ago, what do you say to them that doesn't make them feel bad? That's not going to trigger them. How do you address those things?
I have different methods, but you go ahead and talk.
Okay.
Yeah, Kate, please.
Hey, you talk about that person as if they're alive, because to your loved one, they are. And you can lead the conversation in many directions, but what did you like to do with them?
Right,
Is there a funny story? What, tell me about that.
So the advice to the family is join that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again.
Absolutely.
Enter their world.
Enter their world. Do you have the story about the gentleman who lost his wife?
We had a couple living with us, and the wife did pass away. It was during COVID, so I was serving as the hospice nurse. So I was there all night with them, and when he woke up, his kids were there, and I explained to them, how would you like to tell your father? And so they told him. I walked away, and they told him, and he was like, okay. And then he went out and had breakfast. And to this day, he'll still once in a while, I'll say, hi, Richard, what are you doing? What's for breakfast? And he'll tell me. And then he'll say to me, oh, I'm just waiting for my wife. He'll say her name to wake up. And I'll say, okay, well, we'll go back and check, when we're finished eating. And then he looks across the table at the woman he has a big crush on. I think he completely forgets.
So you just move on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We have a lady whose husband passed away about 2 years ago, and they were actually living in different areas of the building at the time. He was in memory care. She wasn't. Now she is. And she will often be walking down the hall to what was his room. I've got to go visit him.
Yes.
And we'll tell her, he's taking a nap right now. Do you want to, why don't you come over here with me and have a cup
Therapeutic
of tea for a
Lies.
moment?
Right.
Yeah. She was at the funeral. She no longer remembers it.
Right, of
But
course.
you have to ask yourself, what's your goal? If telling them, and it just kills me. Sometimes family members will be like, oh, so-and-so died 10 years ago.
Right.
They go through that
Just
whole
down a
grief
painful
over and
road.
over again.
Yes.
It's that's not what we want to do.
I'm often asked by families what activities they should be doing with their loved ones because they're not used to interacting with them at this level.
This is a challenge.
It is a
Definitely
challenge, and obviously it's
and it
individual.
depends on what level their loved one is, is experiencing. If they're pretty lucid and able to still get up and talk and do things, I had one the other day. I said, you know what? Why don't you bring some nail polish and nail file? Do her nails. And I wasn't even thinking along those lines. And she called me. She said, oh my God, that's a great idea. I'm always looking for things to do with my mom when I'm there. And then she sent me a text after and said, perfect. We spent a good 45 minutes. I was able to talk with her while I'm painting her nails. And, and I'll tell them also, any type of engagement, a shoulder massage, brushing their hair, touching them, looking them in the eye, holding their hands. This is engagement, and this is what they need. This is what they crave.
I noticed there are a lot of photo albums floating around our care homes. People bring photos, and it's just fun to just go through them. And every once in a while, it'll spark a memory, and they'll start talking about a photo. And like we talked about earlier, they'll remember everything about it. And you're like, how in the world do you remember? But it's very specific.
Very specific.
How should a family member or caregiver deal with someone who is angry or exhibiting inappropriate behavior? Also, why is it often sexual? Kate, you want to tackle this?
Oh, you give me that one.
You start, and we'll let Sandy finish.
See if I feel like chiming in.
Okay. Why is it often sexual? I'll just go to that first. Sex is a basic human drive, and let's face it, it feels good. It's why we have billions of people on the face of the planet.
Yeah. So that's part of losing the filter. It's on their mind, and we know that we're not going to talk about it in Whole Foods. But for them, they'll talk about it anywhere, anytime.
Anything is fair game. You lose the filter. You'll say things that could be very uncomfortable for other people, or do things that can be very uncomfortable for other people. Also lose the ability to read social cues.
Right.
Like the horrified look on someone's face, like, oh no, please don't do this right now. So they're just expressing what we're all thinking, but the rest of us are able to maybe suppress that
Sometimes.
or channel it into more appropriate time and place.
Right.
So you cannot ever respond with that look of horror. or you can't do that. What do you do? What's wrong with you?
Right.
Because the person's dignity is extremely important. And they are still that same person inside. They're just not able to express that the way that they used to be able to. And we talk a lot about redirecting. And that's kind of a clinical way of saying, let's distract them or channel their interest into something else.
Exactly.
And you would respond the same way if you catch your kids playing doctor, be like, oh,
Hey,
I see you're very curious.
Let's read this book.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, here, let's go over here and, have some cookies and milk.
go see this therapist.
So aside from the sexual aspect, what do you do when they're aggressive? This is a time to redirect. And Sandi, how do you address that?
Aggression is a tough one. It depends on the situation and how involved our caregivers are able to engage, how much they are able to engage while they're taking care of other residents. I try to intervene every time there becomes any type of aggressive situation. Redirecting as best you can. At some point, sometimes we have to call in extra help. Just go from there. It just depends on the situation. I can't. It's very hard to pinpoint them
because
without
each situation is a little different.
Yes.
But you have to
keeping them safe.
Yes,
keeping the other residents
and keeping
safe.
everyone else.
Yes, and that and many times I will have to physically really push them along to their room with their walker and sit down and just here's a glass of water. Let's just take a deep breath and just
a reset.
Try to reset, redirect.
Yeah.
And if they have their own private duty caregiver, that usually helps. And depending, then you hit the whole medication situation.
Right.
Depending on what they have on board, what we can give and monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as their volume goes up, yours needs to go down.
Exactly.
You don't rise to the occasion. You have to lower to the occasion. There is right. Your voice lowers, your tone of voice has to be very calm. You also don't want to get right in their face immediately because that can feel very
intimidating,
invasive, very threatening, very aggressive. Yeah. So you back up a little. I'll do things like clasp my hands together so I'm not, because I do tend to talk with them, so I make it obvious that I'm not threatening. Apologize. I apologize all the time for things I haven't done and our staff hasn't done, but I'm so sorry. I had no idea that was going on today. It just
quells the situation.
Yes, and as your volume lowers and your manner is very calm, people often tend to feed off of it. They mirror what you're doing, and
giving them
my goodness, let's go talk about this. Come tell me. And sometimes our caregivers will feel like I'm believing everything I'm being told, and I always have to reassure them, no, I'm just diffusing the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a family who questioned me recently. The mother picked up the house phone and called her home to talk to the family. And they said to me, well, if she picked up the phone and she dialed our number, she must be getting better. Sandi, how do you address that?
I just had to explain to them they have moments that, she might remember the phone number, but if she walked outside, she wouldn't have any idea where she is or where to go or how to be safe. So, we take it back to the core of safety and health and environment and the place to keep them where they're safe.
Right. And I think the main takeaway on that is there is no cure and they're not getting better.
Exactly.
They may have a bright moment.
It is. Right.
That's
and
the tragic thing.
It's a hard story to have.
Yeah.
It's definitely
it is a progressive disease.
The golden question from families. You ready for this one? This one breaks my heart. How do I deal with the guilt I feel?
Oh.
Sandi, what do you say to families?
Well, I don't want the families to ever feel guilt. They are so worried about their loved one and what's going to happen to them next, and why can't they remember things? And again, I do provide a lot of resources, educational resources to them, and try to explain to them that this is just part of the process and
yeah, sure.
and support groups and all the other resources that are out there. Right. Seek them all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and you do the best that you can with the knowledge that you have at that moment. So many families will say, oh gosh, now that I know something, I realize this was going on years ago.
Exactly.
And I feel, and sometimes they'll bring up something that 5 years before in a way that they responded that they would not now. And they're like, oh gosh, I feel so bad about that. Still, that haunts me at night.
I hear that a lot.
You do the best with your knowledge at that point.
Yeah.
And the fact you've taken steps to get your parent
To a
or
better
other
place,
loved one
to a
to a
safe
place
place,
where they're
yes.
safe and
Yeah.
with others. That's
And that's part of
I
the.
do provide educational resources all the time, as I'm sure you
Oh,
do
yeah.
as well. And they love that.
Yeah.
The families are really
There's
appreciate it.
2 parts to the guilt. There's the guilt of, I promised mom I'd never put her in
Yeah.
a home,
uh-huh.
because that generation is that was the home. And the other part is leaving them there knowing that they're separated and they can no longer age in place at home.
And I think part of that also is letting the families realize, letting them observe the caregivers with their loved ones, all of us, and how we interact with them, and that sets their mind at ease, usually just very quickly.
Mom is safe, mom is healthy,
Mhm.
mom is doing well. And of course, the families are going to come and mom's going to tell them all the bad things. The meatballs were cold and they wanted to shower me with cold water and all these bad things. But the minute they leave, mom's having the time of her life.
That never
But they'll never,
happens.
but they'll never believe that, right?
Yeah.
So
I
much.
think it's important too, though, to communicate with
Of course.
families. I send
Yeah.
photos a lot.
We do
I
too.
text a lot.
Right.
I share stories.
Exactly.
And there'll be things like, what? They've not talked to me about that in years. And I'm
Right.
like, well, I was here at that moment.
Yes.
And when those connections fire and they can dial that phone number or
Exactly.
whatever, I refer to those as moments of grace.
And the sending pictures and texts and stories has been a life changer
Mhm.
for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, with this technology that we can do that, and
It's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
families
It
can
is.
actually see
And
them
the
in action.
and they can-
Videos, I love to send videos, like little video clips.
And they can feel comfortable,
Mhm.
whether being at home or traveling or going along with their lives, knowing
Mhm.
that mom or dad, they're okay.
Veterans Day.
Exactly.
I have a 98-year-old World War II fighter pilot, and we brought him to the Veterans Day luncheon. We had an entertainer who was singing patriotic
Oh.
songs, and I got about 15 seconds of video of him singing "God Bless America" with her. And yeah, I know.
Yeah, seriously, not a dry eye. Oh.
Sent it to his son, who was like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen Dad sing in years." And but that sparked that in that moment.
Right.
Love
So
that.
that's a beautiful thing to do.
Thank you guys for sharing all of this with listeners. This is really important information. Okay, let's move on to the nugget portion of the show. Football coach cancels weightlifting practice, tells them to trade their weights for shovels and clear driveways for those in need. I think this is great. I tip my hat to you, Coach Delano, in Pennsylvania for turning a negative into a positive and paying it forward to help the elderly community and those in need. Good on you. That was fabulous. All right, on to the lightning round. This is a good opportunity for the viewers to get to know you guys personally without talking clinical. So, real quick. Kate, junk food or health nut?
Junk food.
Health nut.
Do you wash your hands or sanitize your hands?
Wash them.
Wash.
Soap and water, I know. Movies, front row, middle, or back?
Middle.
Front row.
Childhood nickname?
Sand.
Wow, that's childhood
Just
nickname,
saying.
Kate?
Tootie.
Tootie. All right.
That's funny.
Viewers, remember that. Favorite season, Kate?
Fall.
Oh.
Ever lived abroad?
Yes.
No.
Mac or PC?
PC.
Mac
PC.
Or PC. First celebrity crush?
Davy Jones of
I
the
thought you were going to
Monkees.
say mine. Thank you.
Sandy?
David Cassidy.
That was my second.
Kate, can you drive a stick shift car?
Yes.
Sandy, yes. Kate, mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Beach.
Shop local or Amazon?
Local.
Local. Both.
Both. Click. Kate, cake or pie?
Pie.
Cake.
Proudest career accomplishment?
It was in the Army, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so I basically, my unit was mobilized during Bosnia, and we took everybody over and brought everyone back.
Wonderful. Sandy, proudest career accomplishment?
Recently being published in a journal of American Medicine.
That's a big deal. Say, Journal of America.
No, that's not how you say it.
Kate, what advice would you give your younger self?
Choose family over work.
Wow, Sandy,
I agree with Kate.
you're going to go with that?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and insight. If viewers are looking to find you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Probably my email, which is very long, but it's
We'll put it up on the screen.
okay. It's kmarshall@belmontvillage.com.
Fantastic. Sandy, best way for viewers to reach you?
Email as well, sandy@manchesterliving.com.
Great. You can find this podcast and other past episodes online at Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, or wherever else you get your social media. In closing, thank you for listening today. If there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly.